the first term, polynomial. Okay, a polynomial is an expression that has more than one term. And an example of a polynomial would be x to the second power plus 4x. So it's an expression with one or more terms. This is an expression with two terms. So the next definition is going to be for the word terms. The terms in an expression are separated by the plus or the minus symbols. So everything that is separated by a plus or minus, so this would be two different terms because it's separated by the plus or minus sign. All right, so now we're going to get more specific on the number of terms. So in your warm-up, you guys were looking at the different things and you had to tell me which one doesn't belong. So we're going to start with something called a monomial. So I gave you that warm-up to get you thinking about the number of things. So an expression that is a monomial has one single term. So mono meaning one, so that should have been the unicycle that was on the warm-up. So an example of an expression with one term would be just like 4x. That's one single term. It's not separated with any other terms by a plus or minus sign. So then the next term is binomial. So binomial is two terms. Bi meaning two. So an expression with two terms could be like x minus 3. So the x is the first term, the 3 is the second term. So trinomial, we have monomial, which is one term, binomial, which is two terms, which means trinomial is 3 terms. So we can look at an expression that's separated with two different addition signs. So here is our first term, here is our second term, here is our third term. If we have more than 3 terms, we just say a polynomial with blank terms. So if it was 4 terms, it would be a polynomial with 4 terms. If it was 5 terms, it would be a polynomial with 5 terms. If it was 10 terms, it would be a polynomial with 10 terms. So whatever the number is of the terms, that's the number that you would fill in the blank. It's just a polynomial with blank terms. So this is if it's more than 4 or more than 3. So 4 or higher, we say a polynomial with whatever number terms. So that's how you describe a polynomial based on the number of terms that it has. So now I'm going to draw a line, and the rest of our definitions is not going to be about the number of terms, it's going to be about the degree of a polynomial. Let's go ahead and write that as our next vocabulary term. So the next vocabulary term is the word degree. So the degree of a polynomial is the highest exponent. So if I give you the example, x to the fourth power plus 2x to the second power plus x, our degree is equal to 4 because 4 is the highest exponent. So the black terms tell us how many terms are in the polynomial. The red terms are going to tell us how many of the exponents that we're looking at. What's the highest exponent? So the first word under degree is going to be linear. So we've talked about linear expressions before. So a linear expression has an exponent of 1. Now, technically, it's invisible, so we have y equals mx plus b. So the exponent is technically a 1, which is never really written. It's just assumed that if there is no exponent, it's automatically a 1. After linear comes quadratic. So now we're just counting up from the number of degrees. So linear has a degree or an exponent of 1. Quadratic has an exponent or degree of 2. So the quadratics are the ones that have the exponent of 2. So it's going to start going in order now. So a cubic then has the next highest exponent. That has an exponent of 3. So we could use the expression x to the third plus 2. That is a cubic equation. After cubic, there's no special term. It's just going to be a blank degree polynomial. So just like a polynomial with blank terms, whatever the number of the degree is, that's what you're going to put in that blank. So if it's a 5th degree polynomial, it would be x to the 5th power. If it was an 8th degree polynomial, it would be x to the 8th power. Whatever the highest exponent is, that's the number that you would put in the blank. So that's for 4 or higher. So we only have a special name for an exponent of 1, 2, and 3. Any other expression after that, we say a 4th degree polynomial or a 5th degree polynomial. So we just use the number and then degree polynomial after that. So all of the black vocabulary terms, those are what we're going to use for the number of terms. So I'm going to go from here to monomial. All of these terms are what you're going to use on your assignment today. This tells us the number of terms an expression has, while the red tells us what the highest exponent is. So from linear to the blank degree, these tell us the highest exponent. Okay, so we're going to look at the examples at the very bottom, and we're going to classify each of the polynomials. I'm going to go ahead and flip my screen really quick. All right, So the first classification, we are going to do this by the degree. So we're going to look at our red vocabulary terms. We're going to look at the highest degree of the polynomials. So looking at this first polynomial, the highest exponent is 2. I'm going to go back to our notes. An exponent of 2 is quadratic. So this should be super easy. You're just going to look at the term, look at the definition, and then fill in the name. So this one, there is no exponent, but we can assume that it's 1. An exponent of 1 is linear. The next one has a highest exponent of 3. That would be cubic. Now, there is no exponent for this one. There's not even a variable. So since there's 0 variables, we're going to say that one's 0. And we didn't go over this one yet, but that is a constant. So we'll add that after we're finished going over all of the other ones. Anytime it doesn't have a variable, that's considered a constant because it's just a number. So this one has a highest degree of 8, but we don't have a special name that goes up to, so that means it's an 8th degree polynomial. Those are actually a little bit easier because we don't have to think of a fancy name. And then the next one, highest exponent of 4. Again, we don't have a fancy name for that, so that's just called a 4th degree polynomial. And then the last one, skipped one. This one has no exponent, but we assume that it's 1, which means it's linear. Now the last one has a 5, which we don't have a special name, so that is our 5th degree. So that's how we classify them based on their exponents. So now we're going to classify them based on the number of terms. We're going to look at the black vocabulary words. So each term is separated by a plus or minus sign. So I'm going to highlight, this is 1 term, this is 2 terms, this is 3 terms. I highlight everything that's separated by the plus or minus. Since it's 3 terms, we call that a trinomial. Very good. So each time I'm going to highlight, here's my first term, and then it's separated by a plus sign. So this one has 2 terms, which is binomial. Next one, I can highlight 1, 2, 3 terms again. So another trinomial. Number 4 has just one thing. It doesn't have multiple things to highlight. So that means it's only 1 term. That's our monomial. Monomial meaning 1. Very good. This next one has 1, 2, 3, 4, but I don't have a special name for that, so I just call that a polynomial with 4 terms. Number 6, I highlight 1, 2 terms. 2 terms is binomial. Same thing, I think, for number 7. 1, 2 terms is another binomial. And then I've got 1 single term for number 8, which a single term is monomial. Very good. So the number of terms, there's really only 4 different variations that we have to go through. So the last definition that we have to do is constant. We left that one out. So a constant is a polynomial with no variable. It's just a single number. So like 15 is a constant. And 23 is a constant because it doesn't have a variable, it's just a single number.